All right, so hey everybody, welcome to the Be Insightful in Technology podcast. I'm your host, Shakira Johnson, also known as Shy, and I'm here to help you gain knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to be insightful in technology. So today we have more of a C-level guest on the podcast, and they're going to talk about what they do and how they help other businesses with their C-level needs. So Oshri, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us what you do and a little bit more about how people can reach you.
So, my name is Oshri Cohen, as I was very nicely introduced. I am a fractional CTO. So, a CTO that is part-time, dedicated to startups. It's an interesting field, and what I help is fill the gap between the startup not having any money to hire the skill that they need on one side, and the skill that they need, even if they had the money, don't want to work for them because they're too early in their stage of development. So I fit right in there, and I help them get through these challenges. And how people can get to me: my site, LinkedIn, WhatsApp. Knock yourself out. There's 1,000 ways to reach me, and I'm basically on LinkedIn all the time. So if you follow me, get ready for it, because you're going to get all sorts of notifications all the time.
I'll make sure to include his information in the show notes so you guys can reach him. I strongly suggest just reach out to people. There's a lot of knowledge out there. And honestly, this was my first time meeting a fractional CTO where they can bounce around if they wanted to and be able to help multiple different business and partners. So how did you find your passion into your journey of technology? What led you here?
So for, let's say, about the last 6 years, I've had jobs that were not very fulfilling. I've had the CTO job, I've had the VP job, I've been a developer for 20 years, right? For a very, very long time. And so all of these jobs, they weren't that interesting, as what, 90% of your listeners, right? Something like that. And so I started coaching and mentoring younger startups, new founders, new technologists, and I found a passion for it, right? And I found that teaching and just helping other people was fantastic. Now, it's great that it's a passion, but is it going to pay the bills? And as it turns out, very, very well. And the reason why is, yes, I have a very high hourly rate, but you only need me 1 or 2 hours a day. That's the awesome part, right? I don't get, you don't get, I don't waste my time in meetings, answering emails. I'm in here, I do work, I fix things, I teach, and we move on to the next task. Very, very efficient.
Honestly, that's pretty cool. Okay, so I just want to dive in. What does that 1 hour, 1 or 2 hours that they get to be with you really look like? Like when someone first hires you on, what do you run through and do with them?
So what I first do is a technical diagnostics. You're calling me because something isn't working, right? Or you're smart enough, I like those ones, or you're smart enough to know that it makes sense to bring in part-time labor, part-time skill, right? Um, so I start with a technical diagnostics. I look at the people, I look at the processes, I look at your business, I look at the software, the code, everything under the sun. And I'm like, okay, what is not working optimally? Now, you may already have a CTO, which is fantastic. I'm a fractional CTO for that CTO. I know, weird, because they're kind of hiring me to do their job, but they're not really, because I'm coaching them and I'm helping them. Because remember, a startup is young, right? You're not going to have someone with 20 years of experience running a startup, not at least at first, right? Well, for most startups, that's the reality. And so in that 1 hour, sometimes 2 hours, it's a transfer of knowledge, a transfer of experience. I have walked through the minefield many a times. I have made so many mistakes that now you get the benefit of not making, right? So, oh, you want XYZ? I've seen this issue. So let's just not do all of these problems. Let's just avoid these problems right from the get-go. So it makes total sense. That's it. That's what the 1 hour or 2 hours looks like, right? I fill in the gap as well. And what I like to tell my founder clients, because I typically work with the founders, is I'm going to teach you how to think like a technologist. Even if you know nothing of technology, you're gonna learn because you need to know. At this stage of the game, you need to know everything. You can't just like offload it to some professional. It doesn't work that way. You need to know everything.
Oh, that sounds really fun, honestly. Okay, so these times that you get, it does it feel like a coaching session with either the team, like are you working more with like the C-level on down?
So sometimes it's a coaching session. Sometimes it's a therapy session, and I'm there with my coffee and I'm just listening to them talk because they need to tell someone their challenges that they've had with technology. Sometimes I play the role of a lead developer and I review some code, or I do some architectural designs with the team. Sometimes I'm HR, right? So, you know, the thing is with a CTO, there's technology in there, right? But really, it should be a CXO, a see everything, because you need to think like the CEO, you need to think like the finance person, the CFO, like operations, like customer service, like marketing, like sales, all of these things. And on top of that, you need to have a very, very strong engineering and technology base, right? So yeah, that's it. It's very interesting.
All right, speaking of that strong base, let's go into like where you started in tech, where your journey originated from.
So I was the kid who didn't have any friends at 13. So my friend was my computer. I got a computer. I'm like, I'm at 13. All right, fantastic. Let's learn to code. Right? I didn't even know what coding was at the time. Got some books from the library, started hacking away, started playing around. Right. By 14, I was building sites for people. I was building little applications. Right. In an era where you needed a university degree to even be considered for any role. Now, I don't even talk to me about your university. I don't care if you have university. I really don't. I just don't care, right? But back then, 100%. 20 years ago, totally, right? That was 25 years ago. But so that's how I started, and I didn't do university, right? Not for software development. I did university for business administration because I needed a well-rounded experience. And I started working officially at 18, but that's after having a whole bunch of contracts. And I went through every industry you can imagine, from the video distribution industry to marketing to medical and so on and so forth. And fintech, right? E-commerce. Um, and that allowed me to really get knowledge from across the spectrum, right? Which makes me really good at my job right now because you get all of that extra knowledge and all of these things that I did that I went through. Um, I'm giving to you. That's the thing. So, but it wasn't a clean journey, right? It wasn't a clean journey. I worked for some really horrible people. I had a startup as well, and it failed back in 2008 after the financial crash, the worldwide financial crash. So it failed at that point. We just ran out of money, as many startups will very, very soon feel, because there's a recession coming. That's at least what the VCs are all saying. There's a recession coming. Don't ask us for money. Just, you know, buckle up. That's why you're seeing 10 and 20% of companies, of some companies, laying off that much staff. So yeah, so it wasn't always clean. Um, Horrible people. I worked for racists, like outright, like unabashedly, like straight up. If I tell you things, I don't think I can say this on a podcast, but but it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad. And that's it. That's it. Now, because I didn't have university, I had to prove myself. I had to keep learning. I had to keep studying every single day. I picked up a book and I learned something new. And back then, that's how you learned. You had to buy a book. Now you have the internet, which is an unbelievable resource, right? But when the internet was immature in the 90s, no, you went to the library and pick up like a tome like this, like 5,000 pages with a font of like 5, and you were like reading everything and learning, you know? So yeah.
All right. So your journey honestly sounds like you've transitioned to being in a better and happier place.
Yes, definitely in a happier place. And the thing is that, so I stuck to my morals and my ethics, right? So when I was told I couldn't hire someone because of their skin color, and I kid you not, this is insanity. Insanity. You know, my jaw almost fell to the floor. Like, I'm like, what? Are we still talking like this in 2005? Like, what?
Wow.
I didn't know this. I'm like, you know, maybe I was a little bit naive, but I'm like, this doesn't make any sense to me. What are you talking about? You know, and I quit that job a little bit after that. I felt horrible about myself. I felt like I quit. That's the thing about finding your passion. You have to have seen the pits of hell before you actually find what it is that you're meant to do. I don't know if I'm meant to do this, but what's really really good, and what made sense for me, what makes sense for you. So that's a challenging aspect about finding your passion. Yeah.
Going through the ups and downs. And honestly, I'm glad when people find their passion. I'm glad that you found your road to happiness, pretty much. Like what really makes you happy in your career, because a lot of people stick at jobs that make them feel unfulfilled and just stuck in one place, and it tears them down. Like I, for one, have family that just stays at companies because that's all they know and they're afraid to go and do more, and they settle. And then you hear them come home and complain every day where it's like they don't want to be there, but it's just like you could be doing so much more if you step out of that.
I settled once. I settled for the money. I'm like, you're giving me how much money? Is this legal? I'm like, okay, I'll quit a job that I liked for the money. And I moved, and it was a terrible, terrible mistake. It ate me alive because it was the worst experience ever. Not because I chose the money, but because I chose the wrong company. Yeah. If you're lucky enough to move for the money and the company is awesome, do it. Let's go for it. Just jump right in. But yeah, that's it's a difficult issue, because when I was in that pit of despair, yeah, I had quit my job because of the racist. Then I joined one who was a misogynist. I don't know. I found the worst people in the world to work with, by the way. Right?
Oh my
It's the
god.
worst people. Yeah, right? He's like, why don't you work 14 hours a day? Your wife can take care of the kids. I'm like, but I want to take care of my kids, man. What are you talking about? What are you talking about, you crazy young person? Because he was about my age. I'm like, I can't believe we're still talking like that again in 2020, right?
Oh my god.
Right, for real, right? It's not like a 70-year-old dude. It's like a 40-year-old person. This doesn't make any sense to me. But anyhow, um, it was despair. It was absolute despair. It was depression and anxiety attacks and panic attacks, and thinking I needed pills because just to survive, because I thought that's what was normal. But it isn't. That's the reality. It just isn't.
Oh, so since you went through all these kind of like hardships throughout your career, you've seen the worst. What are some of your thoughts, comments, and concerns of like what's going on now that you feel like needs to change as a whole, that you've noticed, even from past, that's still occurring, even from like maybe years ago, that is like not changed at all? If you notice something that's not changed at all.
It's the, how can I say, um, the entrepreneur culture needs to absolutely change,
Oh, tell me more
right?
about it.
So the entrepreneur culture of, you know, be the bleep hole, you know, you know, just keep moving as fast as you can and mow down anybody that's in your way. Not caring for your people. That's the that it's not the entrepreneur culture. It's the toxic entrepreneurship culture, which is more often than not present in most startups, or in many of them at least, and in many large companies. That's what actually needs to change. So I'm gonna frame it into the startup culture as a whole, because it makes good people bad.
Mm.
That's the reality. It makes them behave in ways that they shouldn't be behaving. But because they're stressed, they're overworked, they have no money, whatever it is, or maybe they're just horrible people and they don't deserve anything good in life, you know? But that's what actually needs to change. Slow down. Slow down a little bit and care for your people. Right? Have just a little bit of empathy. It'll change your world.
Oh, I'm glad that you mentioned that. Like, I've noticed from, I'm gonna say I attended an event as a volunteer, and normally, like, the person that is in charge, maybe the event coordinator, and the person who actually is hosting the event is kind of like overall. But they were busy, actually handling what the event was for, and the event coordinator that was under them is I think technically like their own contractor, so they're their own boss. But when it came down to it, they were kind of working their volunteers to the bone. And there was no real food provided. We were there like all day. And it was just like one of those things where it's just like, just because she was over there starving herself, she was making sure everybody else was basically going to starve themselves. And it just kind of felt like, it felt very toxic. You got to take care of your people no matter what you do.
It's this culture of exploitation, right? I want to exploit a maximum amount from people, right? And in order to quantify this exploitation, you need to quantify something, right? In this case, it's hours worked. I want to get as much as humanly possible from you. I'm only going to pay you 8 hours, or volunteer. In this case, I'm going to give you a high five because you believe in it, right? So I'm going to try and get as much as possible out of you. And by every definition of that act, you're kind of dehumanizing people into worker drones. And so you're not going to think about it. You're not going to have the empathy, but you also have to be that kind of person to be able to do that to begin with. Not everybody's like that. Many people are, though.
Like, I realized what is that? Going from kind of like, I used to work in like fast food before transitioning into the corporate life. Fast food is where I had the worst experience is what I can say. When it got to being in corporate, that's when like work-life balance came into play. That's when they were just like, take care of home, make sure you're good on the inside. With fast food, it was just like, I don't care how you feel, just show up and do your job. Like, that
Yeah.
was it was a very shocking transition for me. I had to realize, like, oh, there are people that actually care if I'm okay. Like,
Well, you work in a good corporate culture then.
mhm.
Like that you work in a good one. I've worked in a few that were horrendous as well. You are basically a number, and they didn't care about you in any way, shape, or form, right? Depends. I know I don't like working for the very large companies. I've worked for them. Give me a small to medium sized business. You got tops 300-400 employees. I'm good with that. Let's leave it be. We're done, right? And because they're still small enough to care, but they're big enough to provide that stability and decent amount of work, and everyone's got one job, right? Not five jobs.
Like, oh, okay. So since you like the small to medium size, does it feel more personalized? Like, you guys can all get to know each other. Is it more open?
I think it's more open. Depends on the culture. So I worked for one company. It was a marketing firm out of Montreal, Canada, where I'm from. Um, and it's a marketing firm, very very well known. They had about 300-400 employees across the country. Not too big, but very very decently sized, and they made good money. And I made good money and everything like that. And the CEO was close enough to the action that he almost knew everybody, and he made a point to come and speak to people every so often. Right? Like this guy is 15 floors above me. That's his office overlooking the entire city, but he came down to talk to us. But that I realized was the exception to the rule. That's what I realized. You know, it was the exception to the rule, and not everyone was like that. But I really liked that individual. I ended up getting laid off, actually. I ended up getting laid off, but he felt so bad that he had to lay me off. He gave me 2 months severance, which was fantastic because even by Canadian standard, that's pretty high, you know. So yeah, no, it's very interesting.
Oh, okay. So I'm glad that you are able to, honestly, I'm glad that you're able to relay these experiences because since there are a lot of layoffs like happening, and even during like COVID, a lot of people got laid off. So I'm glad that they were able to give you something for that. Because a lot
Yeah,
of people don't get that. It's like companies just, you find out the next day you're laid off and there's nothing else for you.
and you know, the big problem with these massive layoffs in these very large companies, startups, right? Because they raised an ungodly amount of money and they're hiring thousands of people, and then they're, oh, okay, let's lay off 10% of 10,000 people or 5,000 people. That's a lot of people.
Mm.
That is a lot of people entering the market all in one shot, competing with new grads in a time where jobs are not as easily available, right? Because again, everybody's tightening their belts now. Very slow. It's happening slowly, but it's happening. And so, you know, a period of recession is coming with a whole bunch of people that can't find jobs. It's it's very difficult for them. And I guess the one tip I can give to such individuals, the one tip is, how can I say, is figure out how to enter the gig economy, figure out how to do the contracts and consulting work. We're kind of we're kind of going full circle back into the village model, right? You had the village, you know, dairy farmer who had 2 cows and produced milk for the entire village, and there was nobody else. That's it. One butcher, one this, one that, and that's it, right? And so it just so happens that LinkedIn is my entire village because I have clients all over the world. But we're kind of going into that model. So figure out what you're really good at and just do that. And that's it.
So like that's one of the things where we talked, I had a previous episode where I talked about like specialized skills. A lot of companies need someone with specialized skills. They need someone who could come in and do this one thing because nobody else knows how to do it. Or at least they may have like a general knowledge, but they don't understand it on a deeper level. So
So so the thing is that you can either be a generalist, or a specialist, right? You can't specialize in everything, but generalists have an easier time finding jobs. Specialists much less, but the pay is much higher. But the problem is that even with HR and the way job descriptions are written, and the hiring process in most companies is so flawed. It's so flawed that they miss out on adequate skill. I had an HR person tell me this literally verbatim. You might as well lie on your resume to get the job, because it doesn't matter what's on your resume at the end of the day. You'll still get the job, but they're looking for this perfect individual, right? God's gift on earth, you know, who's willing to work for pennies, you know? So if you want a job, go ahead, like just embellish, knock yourself out just to get in front of them. And then you'll realize that the job description has nothing to do with the interview. And then the interview has literally nothing to do with the actual job itself, like completely polar opposites, you know? So it's a big problem. It's a big problem, you know? I'm a fractional CTO. I do this consulting and contracting right now, and I have a hard time finding a job. If you can believe that, I have a hard time finding a job because they need someone with my skill, but who's also an expert in every technology. Well, you can't have that.
honestly, it's too many areas in technology that no one's going to be expert in all of them. It just is what it is. And I do feel like companies do need to get realistic with their standards. but I do think the people who are creating the job descriptions don't understand anything about the role themselves sometimes. So it's an endless cycle there.
Yes, I agree. There's no expertise. I can say I'm an expert in this technology. Hold on a minute, I'm no longer an expert because it just changed.
Yeah.
That's how fast, right?
Yeah.
It's in a state of flux. You're never an expert. Secondly, um, the people that write the job descriptions are applying a CYA policy, so cover your ass policy. So they're just putting everything that they think is required. Yeah, short of saying candidate must use a keyboard. Yeah, no kidding. Really? Yeah, yeah. 7 years of keyboard experience. I mean, almost at that level, right? Like in software development, we've got this whole management concept called agile methodology. You don't need experience in it. Someone needs to tell you this is how we work, and you go say, okay, this is how you want to work. Fine, I'll work this way. It's not a problem. I'll work this way. But companies in their job descriptions ask for 5.5 years of agile experience. What does that even mean? Do you have 5.5 years of eating with a fork? No, you learned, you eat, you're good. That's it. You don't need any expertise in it. You're done.
I'm sorry. Oh my God. Okay. All right. So since you've been through so much throughout your journey, how could others get to where you are?
So in technology, if you want to get to where I am, the fractional CTO world, or you want to be able to advise startups, or you want to build your own startup, start by building something, literally outright. Take whatever you see, whatever web app you see online, whatever mobile app you see that you've used, copy it, build it yourself. Outright, just go ahead. Do just doing the exercise of building something from 0 to 100, even if you never end up selling it, even if you end up never making any money, you get this well-rounded education and experience that 99% of people don't have, right? That's the thing. You're a product designer, great. Design something and then build it out. Hire a contractor to build it or learn to code. Well, not learn to code. It's a very difficult one, but try to make it into a reality. Try to get that well-rounded education. That's valuable. Maybe it's not valuable to HR, but it's valuable in life in general, right? So I'm building 2 different products right now on the side completely while I'm doing consulting and so on and so forth. And I'm helping all sorts of startups because I got that well-rounded education.
Okay, so do you feel like it was that commitment, like starting out, building something from beginning to end, and ensuring kind of that you understand what it is you're building?
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of education levels or coding language did you start with? Like when you were going through it, what was an example of like a little web app that you built and gave to someone else?
So when I started, I built out a video distribution website. That's it.
Oh.
It's a site that listed out videos that you can then click and play inside the screen, right? That was my first job, actually. That was my first job. And that taught me a lot. That taught me a tremendous amount. The technology, the programming language in itself is completely irrelevant. That's the reality. It is irrelevant because we are in the golden age of software development. And in every language, you can build everything. There are languages that are better than others, like there's a quality of a hammer, right? Some hammers are better than others. So one will fly off, the thing will fly off when you swing it. Another one will stay. There's another hammer that's better for bigger nails, and one for smaller, right? But you can still do everything with everything. It'll just be harder if you choose the wrong technology. So if someone gets into the industry right now, I would say probably choose something like Python, right? Learn your Linux, learn your deployment technologies like Docker, Kubernetes, and all of that. You don't have to be an expert in it. You just have to know how to use it efficiently. And all of these could take you. I learned Python 3 years ago. No, sorry, 2 years ago. 2 years ago. I'm coding in it like an expert now. But I learned it 2 years ago. It didn't take very long to learn, right? After 20 years of coding experience, fine. And then I learned Golang, and then I learned Linux, and then I learned all of these technologies just because I was able to, because I wanted to, right? So yeah.
I like that you talk about how you wanted to learn this, because it's the fact that we're in this information era where everything can, honestly, if you really want to learn something, there's a free resource for everything. So it's just
Yes.
like there's no excuse if you really want to do it. There's nothing stopping you.
There is no excuse, and you know what? The key here is just learning on your own isn't enough. Learn towards a project. Build something out. So I learned Python because I wanted to build a video game, not in Python because I needed to process data for building a video game. So I had a passion and I had a goal of something to achieve, right? Then I learned other languages because I needed something for that video game that I'm trying to build. And so there's that. That's number one. Number two, find yourself a coach. Pay them. Pay a coach. Find someone on LinkedIn who's fantastic at, I don't know, you want to do data engineering or automation, say, hey, I would like to give you money for your knowledge. Can you guide me? That coach in 1 hour will probably save you 100 hours of study, because they'll be able to transfer that knowledge. But that coach will cost you 300 USD for sure. That's the reality. Not much you can do about that.
Sometimes it might be cheaper than a college degree. Oh. So I mean,
it's definitely cheaper than a college degree. And to be honest, nobody's looking, not, at least in the technology world, nobody's looking at your university. Nobody even cares. I don't even look at the education anymore. I don't care about it. I care about your experiences and what you did. Show me a person who is self-taught, and I will take that person over a university grad any day of the week, because they're scrappy and they're able to pick it up.
mm-hmm. Honestly, I like that. Okay, so I'm definitely gonna have you on podcast. I want to have like a panel discussion of the whole certification degrees, and we all know experience trumps all. Like that is like the trump part. So it's just the experience. Even if there's people who don't go to certification, it gives you kind of like something to focus on. Like I noticed I focus like well on being on a certain path. Like when you say focus on a project that you want to accomplish, that's a path to get to, and you have like a complete object, so you understand like how you got there. And oh yeah, what's a motivating, insightful quote that's helped you along your journey?
Oh my gosh. Oh, there's so many. The devil is in the detail. Yes. Pay attention to the detail. Pay attention to the why you're using something and why are you doing this. That's the important bit. When you pay attention to that, you'll start noticing things that you don't notice before, right? So just learning to copy from a book onto a screen and into your brain verbatim doesn't do much. That's just memorization. Really learning is understanding why something was done a certain way and staying on that page or on that concept for weeks on end to try to understand deeply why that matters.
I like that.
Devil is in the detail. There's too many people that where their knowledge is categorized as a mile wide, but an inch deep. They know a lot of things, but not a lot of it. That's the thing. So that's the internet for us right now. That's the internet era. So know a foot deep, and you'll be better than everybody else already. Still a mile wide, but a foot deep.
All right, so thank you for coming in on today's episode. I really like that quote, the devil's in the details, and knowing why you're doing something is very important. So I really hope to have you back on again. And thank you guys for listening, tuning into the podcast. I'll make sure to include Oshri's information. Like, check out his stuff. I really hope you guys look at his LinkedIn, his website, his WhatsApp, whatever, because this is knowledge right here. People who have gone through experience life, done as much as they could have, and still doing it more than that, and are willing to teach. those are the people who we need more of. So, hey, you got one right here. And tune in every week to listen to the Be Insightful in Technology podcast, where you're gaining knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to be insightful in technology.
All right.